Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Manningham City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to Wurundjeri elders past and present and value the ongoing contribution to the cultural heritage of Manningham. I welcome all the members of the public here tonight to this council meeting who have come along to observe proceedings. I'd like to advise those present that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and/or image is broadcast. Manningham Council would also like to acknowledge the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. For the gallery, all council meetings are controlled by a meeting procedure local law. I'll introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda by calling it by number and by reading the title. I'll then call for a mover and a seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I draw your attention to two opportunities for you to ask questions tonight. Verbal question time allows people who registered prior to the meeting to ask questions, but only about issues which are not on the agenda. Written questions are dealt with towards the end of the meeting, and these can be about any issue, including items on tonight's agenda. There are no apologies and requests for leave of absence. Are there any notifications of a conflict of interest? No conflicts of interest? Thank you, councillors. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on 31st of October 2017 and the special meeting of council held on the 9th of November 2017 be confirmed.
Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'd like to second.
Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Any speakers for?
That's it. That's enough.
Okay, I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Verbal questions from the public?
There are no verbal questions, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Item 7.1, petition, the Westfield Development Plans and Sovereign Point Court, Doncaster, Koonung Ward. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Haynes.
I move that the petition with 58 signatories objecting to the amended plans for the Westfield extension relating to the exit from Sovereign Point Court be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Would you like to speak for it?
I would read that out again, but no, and the letter is to the Mayor and Councillors, so we will all get a copy.
Thank you. Okay, anyone to speak against? I put that motion. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. There is no urgent business, so we'll move on to planning permit applications. 9.1, planning permit application number PL16026928 for 19, 21 and 23 Bailey Grove, Doncaster. Construction of a 4-storey apartment building comprising 29 dwellings with associated basement car parking and reduction of 2 visitor car parking spaces pursuant to clause 52.06 car parking of the Manningham Planning Scheme. There is an alternate motion in the documents. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor McLeish.
Mr Mayor, I move that the alternate motion be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Galbally. Councillor McLeish, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this particular proposal is in an interesting position. It's at the end of Bailey, I'll get the name of it right, Grove, and it comprises 3 lots. It's in DDO 8 sub-precinct A, I believe, and this particular site is a classic piece of DDO 8 land. It's in the precinct between the golf course development and Westfield Shopping Centre. It's one of the higher density parts of our municipality, and it's precisely this sort of land that our council in years past identified should be the subject of more intense development because it does have the proximity to the shopping precinct. It is also proximate to the neighbouring reserve, Lawford Reserve. In fact, the northern boundary of the development site is at the reserve. So this is a classic piece of intensification that we wish to see, that we don't wish to see in the other back streets elsewhere in our municipality. And in implementing DDO 8, the council sought to protect the majority of the back streets of Manningham from precisely this sort of development. And the way that was done was by setting aside land under DDO 8 in particular precincts, and those precincts were to be proximate to the major to the major precincts for development and retail precincts. And clearly there is no bigger retail precinct in the city of Manningham than that of Westfield. That's why all the substantial multi-storey towers and apartment towers are there, and that's why this 4-storey tower of apartments will be built. It's only 11 metres tall and is precisely in these particular locations that we see substantial change will occur. I appreciate that this isn't always what the neighbours in those particular areas want, but it does come with the side effect that the property values in these particular precincts have soared massively over the last 6 years since DDO 8 increased, and that has inflated the property values for the owners in those areas. And I'm quite sure that the owners who have sold these particular properties to this developer would not be too disappointed with the price of land that they've been able to achieve for their land as a result of the zoning that council put in place. We don't want to see apartment towers and unit developments spread right across our municipality. We want to see them in the DDO 8 precincts, around our major shopping centres and along our public transport routes along the main roads. That's what the council decided, that's what this particular development proposes, and that's why I'm quite happy to move that this particular proposal go ahead in support with the various amendments and conditions that have been put on the particular development by the council officers in the work with the developer during the resolution of this particular development to their satisfaction. And I ask my fellow councillors to support it.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Galbally?
Nothing to add to that.
Are there any speakers against?
Could I ask a question?
Certainly, Councillor Zara.
Look, I'm very pleased that a number of concessions have been made by the developer, particularly in relation to parking and the exemptions. One thing that worries me a little bit, and I'd like some explanation from the officers, the mandatory height is 11 metres, and I'm a little bit worried about the way we describe that in the summary of the development, where we say that it appears to be 12.35. Worries me the appears. So could someone give an explanation? Will we make sure that it is not exceeding the mandatory height of 11 metres?
Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Certainly that was discussed at the submitters meeting, And the plans will have to absolutely have clarity about, and it's a very complex site, where all those levels are, and every part of the site has to meet that 11 metres. And that's the information that's required as part of the secondary consent of this permit, to give full clarity on that.
Any speakers for? Sorry, actually, I'm still on speakers against, but if you've got another question, yeah. No more speakers? I put that motion to the councillors. Those for? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. Those against? That is carried. 9.2. Planning application PL 17027-190, 20 to 23 Airdrie Court, Templestowe Lower, for the construction of 16 two-storey dwellings. Do I have a mover for that?
I'll move as on the paper, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Goff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and this application has come to us, and I think with what we passed tonight, councillors, this is a great improvement on what was seen earlier on in the iterations of this particular development. And in fact, it has lowered the number, and then we've lowered it again here with the number of units on this particular lot. This is quite a large piece of land. I think it's nearly 4,000, 3,800 and something. No, 4,885 square metres. So it's a really large piece of land. And it's the last piece of land to come to council for development of a parcel of land that was sold by St Kevin's School, and it sold that particular lot of land, and Airdrie Court was continued on up to a hill. A few years ago, there were a number of blocks of land which were about 500 square metres or a bit less going up there, which we allowed houses to go onto with building envelopes on them to protect from neighbours that backed on. There were two other development sites. One was a larger block of land at the very top of the hill, and I think that's had permits and is being built or whatever. And then you've got this really large parcel of land down at the bottom. Originally, things were talked about, and we've moved it back away from the creek, which flows in through there. And originally, when we saw some of these, and not in this plan that's here, but the very first plans that council saw, had a number of the apartments or townhouses actually entering onto Airdrie Court, which was a little bit problematic in many ways, because Airdrie Court is quite a narrow little road. It is a court. And indeed, backing in and out of those other houses and car parking on the street there would have been limited with all of the driveways going down. And so indeed, by turning this development in on itself, we've enabled the fact that that whole stretch of road is left free. If people want to park there, they can, but it's not encumbered with driveways and whatever. And it's turned in on itself, and we've reduced in our recommendation here, we're reducing from what is on the plans, we're reducing the number of dwellings on that. One has gone, perhaps two, if they can't redesign Unit 16 in a better way. This is going to provide a better outcome for anyone that is going to live in there, and indeed there's going to be a little bit more separation now because there are less homes on that particular site between the dwellings, and I think the outdoor spaces from what was originally put in has improved. People in that court are concerned. They're concerned about the traffic and the traffic movements in and out of that particular site. This way, and they were very concerned about the driveways and not being able to access the street. That has been alleviated, and in many ways this is a lot better development for this particular site. Remember, it is a really large site. We're looking at getting 14 or 15 on this particular site. We're getting 15 on 800 square metres on main roads. So, you know, this dwelling is a lot more compact than, I suppose, the traditional houses that would have been built there in the 80s, but it is a good outcome for this particular site, so I hope council will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can only agree with the observations made by my fellow councillor. This is the recommendation from officers is a substantial improvement on the various versions of this particular development that have gone past our desks during its evolution. At one point, as I recall, it had 17 or 18 proposed units and had a very intense use of the site. There were far too many townhouses being planned for this site, not enough space between them, a complete overdevelopment of the proposal. And what we're seeing now is a far more measured outcome, a proposal for 14 units, around 270 to 280 square metres of land per townhouse. That is a far more acceptable outcome for the residents in the community. It isn't what the adjoining residents would like. They've made that, certainly made that very clear to us. But in the end, this development is permissible under the state planning scheme for this piece of land. And therefore, we as a council, if we're going to try and reject developments like this, we're simply passing our decision making on to VCAT. And we're not really in a position to do that. We can't, as a council, abandon our decision making responsibility in respect to planning permits. This development is permissible under the planning scheme. By working with the developer, our officers have been able to come up with a more modest proposal. The 14-metre yellow box tree on the site will be protected if this proposal goes ahead as we're proposing this evening. Bringing it down to 14 units will be far more acceptable, and I think it's a balanced outcome for the benefit of the community who lives adjacent to the property and for the potential new owners of the land who will have a great access to the path, the bike path and pedestrian path through the area and the schools in the area. And I expect it'll be quite a desirable place to live with the school grounds at the rear of the property, giving a potentially pleasant and uncrowded perspective to the rear units. So I ask my fellow councillors to support the outcome, the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Are there any speakers against? I put that motion to the councillors. Those for? That's carried. Item 10, there is nothing for... item 10.1, Amendment C122, Manningham Planning Scheme, Planning Control Update Request for Authorisation. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Do I have a seconder?
Mr Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Oh, sorry. Too quick. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is a particularly administrative amendment that we are putting forward here this evening. What we're doing essentially with virtually every one of these particular changes that are proposed in this planning scheme amendment is an administrative clean-up of details within the planning scheme. What happens with the planning scheme is when the state government makes generic changes across the planning scheme, when they implemented the zone reform a few years ago, they, as a government, use their administrative planning team to update all of the mapping for all of the new zones. And what happens when that mapping is implemented is there are occasionally mistakes. Blocks that are zoned one way when translated, but the map incorrectly puts them in a different zone. And that creates all sorts of complications for the poor property owners because it's entirely unclear for those property owners what is the basis for them to try and develop that property. If someone buys that property with a view to redeveloping it, what do? Which particular zone applies? So it is quite normal and common practice when, after just such an amendment has gone through, that after a period of time, the council organisations come through with an amendment like this that cleans up the mapping and says the intended zoning for this house is X and the mapping should be adjusted to reflect that. And what we have here, for the most part, is a long list of just these corrections. There are a couple of other minor amendments which actually impact this particular building and a couple of other technical areas that need correcting, and the council officers have brought forward this particular planning scheme amendment to give effect to all of those matters they've identified that need doing, and I would encourage all my fellow councillors to support this administrative planning scheme amendment to see it go through the normal planning scheme process.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Kleinert. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Though I agree that a lot of these things are administrative, by reading through the report, and I believe that there will be individual owners affected by this and notice of proposed amendment, and yet there hasn't been any consultation that I'm aware of. And those other properties to do with what council owns and the alignments and things within it, I truly believe need to be considered publicly more. The notification to do with the historical societies and other administrative issues, I believe, will affect people, and there needs to be further consultation with the community. And I ask that we consider to not do this before Christmas and at this busy time, that we ask for this planning amendment to go to the Minister next year when people have been discussed and consultated, and that we've had further information from them, and that we defer this, and that I don't see any reason that we should rush it, and I ask that you consider deferring this for 6 months.
Questions?
Thank you, Jeff. Sorry, Councillor Goff.
I'm asking a question. I could be wrong, but I thought this was an amendment to get rid of anomalies that were there in the translation from our planning scheme, and it was picking up errors, not new things, but errors that were made in that translation that were picked up. Now, am I mistaken, or was that?
That's my understanding, and I'll ask the officers to confirm.
Through you, Mr Mayor. That is correct, but the process is, and for clarity, we still have to go to the Minister and ask him, can we actually start the process? And there will still be some notification just to let people know, because a lot of these have been brought to our attention by people. So this gives us time before the Christmas period to go to the Minister, and any notification to residents then won't happen until February. Whereas if we wait till February, then that's another 2 months. And this actually is affecting people who approached us. So this is just an expedience of technical issues.
So my quick question is, we're not approving that rezoning now. We're saying, listen, these are anomalies, and the people that could be affected will be notified later in the process.
That's correct. With every planning amendment, the Minister for Planning is the final approval authority.
Thank you. Do I have a speaker for? Any further questions? I'd like to put that motion to the councillors. Sorry.
Sorry, Mr Mayor.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that point of order.
Thank you, Mr
Councillor
Mayor.
McLeish.
Councillors, I'll say again, I'm quite comfortable that in my experience this is a perfectly ordinary planning scheme amendment. This is correcting anomalies in the planning scheme. It's bringing the planning scheme up to date and is ensuring that the translation of the neutral translation of properties that were adversely impacted when the mapping was done are corrected, so that the property owners have surety about the zoning that applies to their land. This is going to go through a normal planning scheme process, amendment process. The residents will be communicated with, they'll be asked for, they'll be given an opportunity to provide brief feedback to council, and I say absolutely no concern with this. We've seen these sorts of amendments done before. Some of us have when we've been on council, and I expect to see these again in future, because this is what happens in the highly complex and technical areas of planning scheme administration. The mapping is a complex thing to do. There's a heck of a lot of properties in our municipality, 46,000 of them, and that's just the residents' properties. There's a lot to do in this particular area. It happens right across Melbourne. This is a perfectly standard planning scheme process adopted by councils across Melbourne, and I ask you to support it.
Thank you, councillor McLeish. I will now put that motion to the floor. Can we, are those for? Those against? That is carried. Item 10.3. Sorry, 10.2. Thank you. Victorian Planning Provisions Reform Council submission. Do I have a mover? Thank you, councillor Chen.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you, councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Chen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning has published a Reforming the Victoria Planning Provisions discussion paper and is seeking feedback from council. And the deadline initially was 24th of November, now extended to the 1st of December. And there are 5 proposals in the discussion paper, and the details are in the agenda. And we all know that the increase of planning permits applications and the complexity of our planning scheme affect efficiency. So council is broadly supportive of the proposal, but there are items that council does not support. For example, council does not support removal of permit for a dwelling extension or associated outbuilding. Council does not support car parking exemption in selected zones for existing buildings where floor area is not increased. Council has also identified some issues that are specific to Manningham. For example, the importance of clarifying and simplifying the green wedge provisions and the flood management provisions. So I move that the council endorses the attached submission and authorize council officers to forward the submission to the responsible department. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Chen. Councillor Zafiropoulos.
I totally agree with Councillor Chen's comments, and I'd like to include the point that this is very similar to the previous item on the agenda, because it basically removes duplications and reforms the Victorian planning provisions, and therefore it'll make it much easier for us to examine, assess planning permit applications. Therefore, I support the motion.
Thank you, councillor Zafiropoulos. Speakers against? Thank you. I'll put that to the floor. Those for? That is carried. 10.3, Trial Solar Savers Special Charge Scheme Declaration. Would I have a mover?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, councillor Galbally. Do I have a seconder?
I second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Piccinini.
Yes, I'd
Councillor
like to say something.
Galbally, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you. I'm sure we'll all remember that back in September 2017, here at council meeting, we resolved to commence the statutory process to declare the Soul Savers special rates and charges. This process has now completed, and obviously with no objections, considering that all 9 householders qualify and actually asked for our assistance. They are all from low-income households in our municipality, and what happens for them is that they can have upfront solar and can immediately reap the benefits and would help them with their cost of living and assist them in adapting with climate change. So I hope this is first of many, but thank you. I'd like that declared.
Thank you, councillor Galbally. Councillor Piccinini.
Nothing further to add, Ms. Mayor.
Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for? That's carried. I'd just like to remind people in the gallery that we will be clearing the questions box shortly. Please submit any questions you may have in the next few minutes. I'd also stress that I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to the council through the normal channels. Item 11.1, North East Link Community Survey Response. Would I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Piccinini.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galbally. Councillor Piccinini.
Mr Mayor, this item is in regard to our community survey of the North East Link Authority's proposed options, which may now seem like a moot point now that the Andrews government on Saturday declared option A is the preferred route. Nevertheless, the results are interesting. 20% of householders responded, and that was approximately 10,500 residents. There was no clear preferred route, and the preferences were seemingly evenly distributed amongst the residents. Although if we were to delve a little deeper into those results, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bias in the preferences and residents tended to prefer a route outside their own area. But on the whole, it looks like the preferences were evenly distributed. Mr Mayor, option A has now been estimated to cost $16 billion. This is more than double the original estimate of 7 and the one advertised of 11 billion. It will be the government's biggest and most expensive ever road project, and in my view, this will lead to the tolling of the Eastern, notwithstanding what the government has said. It's difficult to see how it could be funded otherwise. New road projects are public-private partnerships, and they involve tolls. It is not the completion of the true ring road. It is the northern arterial serving the growing northern corridor. Freight from the Port of Hastings and from the airport and beyond will be hurtling through our suburbs.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Point of order.
I'm sorry, Mr Mayor. I appreciate that councillors' views are well held, but relevance. This is about a survey result. It's not about the route. It's not about commenting on the route. It's not about commenting on the traffic. It's about a survey result for the council undertook within its community. There are differing views on this particular proposal around the table, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're staying focused on the issue at hand, which is the survey response. So relevance is my point of order, Mr Mayor.
I'm happy to let Councillor Piccinini continue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's clearly different, Mr Mayor. I'll get it right eventually, probably at the end of the year. But there's clearly different views amongst councillors at this table, and it is a vexed and heated topic in our community. So to continue, option A, in my view, will bring freight from the Port of Hastings and from the airport and beyond hurtling through our suburbs. And those freight trains will be sharing the roads with our residents. And they'll all be trying to get through the Mullen Tunnel, and the Eastern Freeway car park in the mornings will be extended from the Chandler exit ramp to Bulleen Road. 74 residents have also already been served with notices of intention to compulsorily acquire, as well as many businesses. And that for sure there'll be many more served with such notices once we know the true extension of the Eastern. The cynic in me wonders if politics has played a greater part in the decision over common sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Galbally.
Is anyone against it? No. Okay, look, I'd like to bring this topic back to the recommendation, which is actually about the community survey that Manningham undertook, and the reasons behind the survey was undertook. I think if we all remember, Council's resolution was to object to option A, and that was Council's stand. Now, this survey was basically for us to better understand and give our residents a voice and a choice, and to be able to voice their opinions. And interesting enough that option A comes up with 35% of the 20% that we received. And then, then we've got B, C. And I think Councillor Puccinini is quite correct in probably saying that anywhere but in my backyard, thank you very much. But Manningham Council has been disadvantaged in a lot of ways with all three of these options, in that any one of them was going to affect our council and our residents. It was a lot easier for other councils to knock it back, so they didn't have to do a survey because it was going to be quite clear-cut. No one was going to want A. But we had, we had other residents that were going to be severely impacted by B, C, and obviously D doesn't touch us, but it didn't actually get the final board anyway. So I think this survey gave us what we needed, and it gave us the apparent even balance of A, B and C, that it was quite clear that it was a mixed numbering and very close. So it wasn't very strong, and I've got to commend our residents, because seriously, I would have thought that it would have been 50% against A and 50% for the other two, depending on where everyone lived. But obviously, people sort of looked at it for the benefit for travel times, transport needs, and any other issues that was important to them at the time. So I still think it's important to take it through to and send it to NALA. They need to know what our residents think and say and believe, and hopefully they'll work with us towards their final design. Thank you, and I hope you, obviously it's just a recommendation to let the survey be passed on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galbally. Any speakers against?
May I ask a question?
Sure. Councillor Haynes.
Mr Mayor, how much did this survey cost us and the ratepayers to put through?
Relevance, please.
Well, I want to vote one way or the other, whether I
Thank
support
you.
the survey results, so I need to know further information.
We've done the survey, so.
Well, it's already done now.
I'll ask the CEO to answer that
No,
question.
whether I support the results, sorry, that's why I want to ask that question.
Yes, and it's around the region of $150,000 to $160,000.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, thank you, CEO.
Any further questions or speakers against?
What about a speaker for?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move to suspend standing orders so that councillors may address the matter.
Better vote on that first.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. Let's, I'll put that motion to suspend standing orders.
For the duration.
The duration of this.
And just the standing orders, we're not suspending standing, we're just suspending so anyone can speak.
Thank you.
We're not suspending standing orders, then we can do what we like and we can speak 10 times and we can argue and do everything.
Hopefully not.
Would anyone, so let's, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and it was interesting to see the results of this particular survey, and there are quite a number of things. Whether we actually get a full understanding of what people believe, I don't know that we ever would be able to on anything. But it has actually shown that, yes, you could say that it depends on where it is, but there is a big concern with a large number of people in our population about what's going to happen there. Now, it has been announced, and it really is interesting that within a day of it being announced, other things can come out that they were going to take quite some time. However, this is something that I suppose when we say everyone knew about it, or trying to inform people, there was still quite a number of people. There's quite a big business community down in Bulleen that actually didn't know about this until a week ago. And they had their first meeting about it about a week and a bit ago. Now, that could be because they're business people and busy running their businesses and not checking the mail on council things, but that was a whole cohort that was actually missed. And one of the things with option A that comes in here is it not only gets rid of council infrastructure, and some of the big Bulleen Park front oval goes, which renders all that beautiful big building that we've got at Bulleen Park, the change rooms and the whole stadium there, it becomes superfluous if the published route is going to go through as it is now. But also there's a dislocation of about 100 businesses, 1,000 workers, 1,000 employed people in our area are going to be displaced and have to go somewhere else if this particular project goes through as it stands at the moment. We need to look at see what changes we can make for our community, because it is very important. It is very important the Manningham community understands the pressures on the Eastern Freeway once this is made. The pressures are that this road is not just a pretend ring road, it is a northern arterial. The northern arterial that was wanting to be built in the 70s is now being delivered. Instead of in Ivanhoe, it's being delivered in Bulleen. And it is being delivered because what it's going to do is all of those growth suburbs to the north, and you can even take Craigieburn, which is sort of, on the Hume Highway area, going up to Sydney. Vehicles will enter the city via Bulleen because they'll head down to the ring road, they will do a left-hand turn and be taken right in to get to the Eastern Freeway at Bulleen. That is going to create a lot more vehicle travels, because if you just take a drive north and see all the hundreds of thousands of people that are building homes and living up that north area, this is their freeway into town. And the pressure on the Eastern Freeway for the traditional users is going to be absolutely immense from Bulleen or Doncaster to the city. But then we look the other way, and the ring road stuff, we are mixing up. The idea of the ring road was to get the road transport separated from commuter transport. What this actually does is it brings them together on a piece of infrastructure, first of all the tollway and then the Eastern Freeway, which I hope all governments of all persuasions into the future will honour a commitment that the Premier made as to not to toll it. Now, this particular part of the infrastructure is going to mix that traffic, and it is going to be mayhem with all of this extra traffic of commuter traffic coming to the city mixed with the transport traffic, and using the section of Bulleen, of the Eastern Freeway from Bulleen Road out to the East Link. And so this does have a great deal of ramifications for the people of Bulleen, notwithstanding the people that are being told that their houses are going to have to go with regard to this, and the problems it is going to cause for our community. Manningham does not have very many areas of industrial land or light industry or anything. And we go on about, trying to save energy and wanting to have livable cities and working within the area where you are. We've got 1,000 people, most of them locals, displaced from work from an area of Manningham, and we don't have anywhere else in Manningham for them to go. This is a major, impact on Manningham and its ability as an employer and to have work in their own suburb here. It's going to have a massive impact on there if those factories go, and I hope that we can work out ways in which they don't have to leave.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Anyone else? Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Could I ask you to keep the comments to within 5 minutes?
Oh, 3 it is, normally.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Mayor.
get 3, he gets 5.
Mr. Mayor, this matter is about a community survey, and our community, it appears, is divided on its preferences to which route is which. In the end, what the government has approved is an alignment, and they're going to do more detailed work on the physical construction of where the final construction will occur. We'll hear more about it in the future. There's no doubt about that there is significant impact on our community. Our council said as much when our council recently, I think it was the September meeting, where the council moved a motion and said that we support, in principle, a North East link. We passed that motion at that meeting, and in doing so, we said that we raised significant concerns with many aspects of it. The impact on our community facilities is one of those concerns, the impact on the residents for whichever route was chosen, the impact on traffic, and all of those concerns, and there are more, I won't bore you with them all because anyone can find them in the minutes of the council agenda from that meeting. There are many concerns that we have for the livability and safety of our community for the route that has now been announced. And I'm certain that we as a council will work together to try and protect as best we can the desires and aspirations for the residents who are living along the alignment. And I know that our organisation will be working very hard with the state government to try and do precisely those things, both this state government and the next state government, of whichever variety it is. There has been some positive announcements for our community in the last few days by the government in the proposal. They have proposed the widening of the Eastern Freeway as part of this development. That is seriously needed. It is our residents who are impacted by what's going on at Bulleen Road every evening on the Eastern Freeway. It's our residents that are being impacted by trying to get into the city every morning, whether it's in the bus or whether it's in the car. We are one of the most car-bound municipalities in Melbourne. Why? Because we don't have a heavy rail. We're reliant upon buses. And that these enhancements to the Eastern Freeway will be of some benefit to our community. Yes, we are going to pay a price, but we were going to pay a price whichever of route A, B or C was chosen. It's now, unfortunately, for the residents in Bulleen are the ones that are going to pay that price. But it will still affect many residents along the Eastern Freeway corridor because the increased traffic and the pollution there is no doubt it will be there. But the government has also said that they are going to build a busway down the Eastern Freeway from Doncaster to Collingwood. And that is a substantial benefit for our community. It isn't a heavy rail, it's not what we're after. But we made a decision as a council a couple of years ago that we wanted bus rapid transit as a transition to heavy rail. We wanted it built in the middle of the freeway to improve travel times for our community. And this government has gone some distance in that direction. It will be of great benefit to the bus-bound commuters in our city. It will significantly improve travel times. And I think the government is to be commended for at least taking that initiative in this difficult decision which they've made, which has no doubt has a terribly difficult impact on many in our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Anyone else? Sorry. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to give some clarification, the reasons for my question earlier is, in hindsight, I believe the survey was not a benefit to the community at all, and that money was not well spent. And I hope that any other future surveys that we do, that we give them greater consideration and not just on the night of making the decision, but prior to that get briefed on the outcomes and the possible costings prior to putting surveys out to the community.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Clynott.
Thank you. Excuse my voice. This is about the North East Community Survey response. This is part of a project that is a long project, and we're part of a marathon. We're at the very beginning of a very long process. And as far as communication and engagement and consultation, we've gone out to the public, to the whole of Manningham, because the whole of Manningham is affected in this by route A, B and C. The feedback from the survey will help us inform future submissions for NELA, that no one can turn around and say, why didn't you add this? Why didn't you do this? We gave the whole of our city opportunity to speak. We gave our city a voice. And with that, as we progress through this very, very long process, taking into account there's a state election in the next 12 months, that this is not over. And we will be part of being at the table continuously with NELA throughout this process, to wherever this process takes us. I think this has been very important. 20% of our residents, they've chosen, 20% have chosen to put their feedback. The others, for whatever reason, have chosen not. They entrust us in a long haul project. This doesn't happen overnight. I think it's been very valuable. As Councillor Galbally said, it really shows that it's quite a divided municipality, which we already knew, but it shows it much easier in a group of us which has got very differing views across this table, and respectfully so. We all desire the best outcome for our city. We all desire and want better infrastructure. We want better transport, but we do not want to lose our sporting fields. We do not want to lose our schools and places that are important to us, places that have great significance in our city. So I see this as a very good thing, as part of a long process, because the process has just begun. So councillors, I think, you know, we need to be very smart, need to be very strategic on this, and this is just part of many steps that we'll take very carefully, very slowly, very directly, in being at the table with NELA. So ultimately we will get the best outcome for our city. And the only way that we can do that is to strategically work together for the best outcome. And unfortunately, that there'll be winners and there will be losers in this, but ultimately we will try our best as we take the best step that we can, taking time to work with NELA, with the state government in this project.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Anyone else? Thank you, Councillor Chin.
Option 8, number 8, you only announced a few days ago. And I already have received many feedbacks from the Bulleen residents and how heartbreaking they felt on that Thursday night and the Friday morning door locking. Just imagine if I were then, I was very devastated. And for what council can do, because there are still a long period of time from the announcement to the specific route and designated specific areas, the houses that are going to be acquired by the state government. And I just urge our council, our officers and our councillors all together take a very proactive role and ask NELA that we want to be part of it, to be consulted, to have input, and in the meantime, just to do the community that are mostly affected a favor, just to try to find measures that could mitigate the impacts, the adverse impacts on them, no matter that is financially, physically, or mentally. And many people that have been lived there for decades, they raise their children and they are devastated. And so we should be compassionate about that, and then we should now consider what we can do for them just to mitigate the adverse impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Zafiropoulos.
I might add a couple of comments. I think most of the things have been said. I would simply like to state that consultation, particularly by a council like ours, is vitally important, because it informs council to make the best possible decision that reflects the needs and concerns of the community. However, consultations need to be done in a way that they bring about results that help the decision-making process. Unfortunately, the timing of this consultation was not fortunate for us. Obviously, we couldn't predict when the result would be announced. But I think, retrospectively, you know, $160,000 is a lot of money to spend on a survey that ultimately will not do very much for us, because it just basically showed us that our community is divided. And nevertheless, the intention was good, because consulting people is a good thing. I think, given that we have spent $160,000 and we got results that will go to NELA to indicate which option Manningham desires, there's no value in it because already Nella made a decision. I would like to back Councillor Chan's comments, and I think Councillor Piccinini's about the real concerns now that the option has been announced. I think Council should focus on those people and undertake all the necessary interventions, interactions with Nella, and perhaps here is a chance to do a consultation with those people affected and see what is the best way to inform them of options, to inform them about the more specific things that Nella intends to do and the government. And I know some of us have interpreted the government's announcements in a particular way, but ultimately we need to hear exactly what government has in mind for the option that they have announced. So I would encourage Council, having spent $160,000 for the previous survey, to undertake a lot of community consultation, not necessarily a survey, but a lot of interaction with the residents affected, give them an opportunity to come and talk to us, find out about the concerns they have, and do it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Gabley, you want to?
I just want to close off because I'm only the seconder. You're closing off.
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just having another word.
You'll just
Quick
clarify because the.
I actually said we're not moving that part.
Yeah, I think you'll need to clarify whether.
Because she's a
It's
seconder.
suspended standing order, so sure.
Yeah, yep. Suspending orders were, standing orders were suspended.
Okay, I'll speak again to this.
So, just to clarify. Okay. I'm sure after Councillor Galbley, someone will move for the standing orders to be reinstated. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr Mayor, look, I'm just concerned that everyone's sort of focusing on what a survey has cost and that it might be useless, but it's not useless. And that's what I tried to say before, is that other than what is here in front of us, there were a lot more precise figures and concerns that our environment and our community have given us. You know, they've discussed noise pollution and existing roads, the parklands, local amenity. It doesn't just talk about option A, B and C. That was just one part of it, which that in itself is pretty telling, as I've already said. So, and then we're talking about more surveys, more consultation. Well, we pass this on to Nella. Nella is the people that are going to be designing it. And of course, I assume that once the design is nutted out and we know exactly what we're dealing with, we can actually put some more arguments for our residents, as I'm sure that our residents that will be affected will want us to be doing. But can we just sort of pass this survey result and just let the ball roll and let the action happen next? Our residents are going to be well advocated by council at every level and through Nella as well. So can we just concentrate on the job at hand? Thank you.
Can we resume standing orders?
Do I have a seconder? Can I take a vote on that, please? Thank you. Standing orders resumed.
I'll move that the motion be put.
I think the motion was already put
Yeah, we're back.
by Paula. Paula has a right of reply. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, it's very pleasing that every councillor has had an opportunity to speak on this issue, because it is a very vexed issue in our community, and no doubt one of the biggest community issues and concerns that we will face as a council in this term. And it is a marathon, to reiterate Councillor Kleinet's comments. This is a marathon, and as councillors, we will be looking at this issue from every angle. We will be communicating, negotiating and dealing with Nella very closely, but there is also an election between now and the construction of whatever option is chosen or will be proceeded with, and we can all remember what happened to the East-West link. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the councillors. Those for? Those against? That's carried. Before we move on to the next item, I'd like to remind everyone of the council's position as stated, in that we will be seeking on behalf of all Manningham residents to work with Neela in limiting the mitigating the negative impacts that this option or whatever option is decided in the end, and we look forward to that. I'd also remind people that Neela have actually some options in terms of staying involved. There's a visitor community drop-in over the coming weeks. The Neela team will be at Rosanna, Bulleen, Heidelberg and other locations. That information you can find on northeastlink.vic.gov.au. Thank you. Item 11.2, police loan vehicle. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Chen.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Would you like to say anything, Councillor Chen?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council has been in close relationship with the Victoria Police, and both parties work closely together to make our community have a strong sense of safety and security. Council and the Victoria Police entered into a memorandum of understanding that we call the MOU and vehicle loan agreement in 2014. And the mainly that the council provide council vehicle in exchange to Victoria Police expanded police service within the Manningham area for 3 years or 100 or 1,000 kilometers, whichever comes early. Council receives requests from Victoria Police to extend the agreement to a further year, and a 3-yearly performance report in relation to the use and value of the loan vehicle has also been provided by the police to the council. And Mr. Mayor, Manningham remains one of the safest municipalities in the metropolitan area. Given that the benefits of the expanded police services to our community, I ask my councilors' support to the extent the MOU and the loan agreement to a further year and to expire on the 12th December 2018, and a report presented to council in November next year to review the council's position of the ongoing partnership with Victoria Police.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Kleinert, would anyone like to speak against?
Could I ask a question? As policing in this state is a responsibility of the state government, and whilst I support the extension of 1 year of this agreement, I'd like to know whether other councils have similar agreements, and also whether this has the potential to be an ongoing subsidisation of a state government function by this council.
Thank you. I'll ask the CEO.
Yes, on the first aspect, they'll take that question on notice in terms of other councils are undertaking, and I guess there's an opportunity for council to either debate the other aspect now, or in the 12-month period as run up next year.
Okay. Any speakers against? Any more questions? I'll put that motion. Those for. That's carried. Thank you. There's nothing to report on community programs or shared services. So we'll move to 14.1. Manningham Quarterly Report, Quarter 1, 2018. Do I have a mover?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Piccinini.
Mr Mayor, while Manningham and our community have had a lot to deal with this council year, what with Nella and the proposed freeway and with flood mapping and the concerns in our community, our council officers have not taken their eye off their collective KPIs. And it's pleasing to report that they are doing a sterling job. We are very lucky as councillors to have such a high achieving council. You will note from the report that phase 1 of our centralised contact centre was implemented by the due date, which was August of this year, and we have had excellent preliminary results. A significantly higher proportion of calls are now being handled at the first call in a shorter time. And that figure is set to rise. And with respect to planning, the statistics for making decisions within 60 days and the time taken to decide planning applications have significantly improved. Council has also this year undertaken an organisational restructure, and there have been a number of redundancies, and that's never easy. And I commend the officers and the staff with the way that they have handled these changes. We have had a new values program implemented at council, and Mr Mayor, you have championed those new values in your inaugural speech. We're even conducting a gender audit, so you can't say Manningham is behind the times. We're clearly financially well managed. Our budgets and our actuals, they're barely a fraction out. Our capital works projects are making satisfactory progress, and any delays have been out of our control. They're subject to third-party interactions. And I commend the officers and the CEO for their hard work this year and their significant progress on these published KPIs. This is a good news story.
Thank you, Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I agree with a lot of what Councillor Piccinini has been talking about there, and I think it's interesting that that spotlight on planning, and like all local governments, we have to give in our figures, and we're actually put in a table and compared to all the other cities, and especially our like cities, ones that are about the same size, same sort of area from town. And we've worked very well on that. One of the difficulties is that sometimes people doing research on Manningham actually don't get the last minute figures. And I think there was a report in the newspaper not long ago, last week or something, that actually had, I think, figures from correct me if I'm incorrect, 2 years ago, 2 year old figures, and there have been significant improvements in that area. So when people are doing stories on Manningham, it would be nice, so this might enable them to get some updated figures to create a story with some updated figures rather than relying on something that was 2 years ago. I congratulate, look, this set out for the report is so much nicer than paragraphs and paragraphs and graphs and sheets and paragraphs and more paragraphs, and you get bored by the end of it. You can delve deeper into what's going on here, but the way in which it's presented I think is really good, and it's easy to read and anyone can read it. And in fact it was very interesting because the other night last night at the Streetscape and Open Space Committee, one of the people there actually talked about our communications with the community and how it would be improved if it was more diagrammatical and pictures and things like that, rather than a whole lot of language for people that don't speak English well. And you know, that's exactly what this is. It's for people that can speak English like me, that don't like reading lots, and seeing quickly at a glance how things are going. So I think we've made a great step forward in the way in which this information is presented, and it's quite right. The council is running well, it's well run and it's running well and financially viable. And in fact, one of the hardest things, and the capital works, if you look at a capital works graph here, and it's on page 193, often in councils you'll find a capital works graph is often like a parabola, or sometimes it's finishing off the last year's work in the year, in this year, and it's sort of like a parabola like so, or whatever. This one here has got a nice little straight line. So in order to get that, you have to be pretty good to actually make sure that the work is continuing and progressing along, and that's what's being done. I suppose, and spending the money on time and making sure that that money is spent, because we don't want to be carrying that capital works money forward and pretending we've got extra money to spend in the next year, which is a trick that some councils do. If you don't spend it in that year, it adds on to the next year and you sound really good by spending a lot more money on capital works, but you didn't spend the money from the year before. It really is vigilant for us to make sure that we do spend the money. So, councillor, good set of figures, well presented, and councillors, I think we're very proud of these particular figures and hope that organisations wanting details of our current figures, I hope we are able to quickly answer their phone calls or email inquiries or look up on our internet to get the latest facts.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Any speakers against?
Mr Mayor, not really against the report, just against the fact that it says Q1 of 2018. And can I ask for the agenda heading to be altered, an amendment for that, and I support the report.
Very good pick up, thank you.
2018 financial year.
No, it's the Q1 for 2018. For June, September 2017, this is a report. It's just a little mistake.
Yeah.
And I'd like that altered, because in the agenda I don't want them to think that this is next year's report.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Any questions? Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I did have a question. I'm looking at page 195 of the report, and I was just wondering if the CEO could clarify for me. This is telling us that decisions made within 60 days, in the first 3 quarters of last year, it was at 28, 26, 23%, and we're now up at 62%. So is it right that for 2 quarters we have doubled the number of permits decided within 60 days, and that we have substantially improved the number of planning decisions made? We've actually sort of doubled the number of planning decisions made, or actually added a 50% improvement? Is that what that's telling us? 50% improvement in the number of planning decisions made, and that the median days is a third better for all planning decisions? Is that what these stats are telling us?
Through you, Mr Mayor. If I'm looking at the same graphs that you're looking at, the decisions made within 60 days, the increase from 28.2 to 64.5 is a significant percentage increase, and it continues on from the Q4 of the last period. So that's true. The numbers have increased slightly. I guess the challenge with statutory planning is the throughput is often dependent. There's a lag with what comes in. So if we get a rush, and you can see that in some of the stats above that, when the numbers are very high, invariably the turnaround times increase as well. And so there's often during the year ups and downs, and it's across the whole year that we measure ourselves. So this is a continuous improvement exercise, and we have had some challenging results in the past. There has been a lot of work undertaken in-house on systems to get these things improving, and we'll continue to work in that space.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'll put that to the floor. Those for? Carried.
Especially with that amendment.
14.2, council meeting schedule for 2018. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Kleinert.
The recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Haynes. Thank you. Councillor Kleinert. Nothing.
Nothing to add. Well said.
I'll put that motion. Those for? Thank you. Carried. 14.3, appointment of authorised officer, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Do I have a mover for that motion?
That the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, councillor Kleinert. Do I have a seconder? Thank you.
Second that motion.
Thank you, councillor Piccinini. Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Piccinini.
Nothing to add.
Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for?
You're anxious.
That's carried. Record 14.4, record of Assembly of Councillors, November 2017. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you, councillor Chen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Haynes. Councillor Chen. Councillor Haynes.
No, nothing to add.
Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for? It's carried. Thank you. 14.5, documents for sealing, 28th of November 2017. Do I have a mover? Councillor Piccinini.
Mr Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Sorry. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Galbally.
I'll second that motion.
Councillor Piccinini.
I have nothing to add.
Councillor Galbally.
None for me.
Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those for? That is carried. As there is no urgent business, written questions from the public.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there are two sets of questions. Is Dr. Lyle Douglas in the room? No? Okay. Is Ms. Kay Perkins in the room? Ms. Perkins writes, as a concerned resident, I, like other neighbours, spent almost 2 hours studying the plans and reading the details for 19 to 23 Bailey Grove. I compiled after much thought my objections. We then attended the meeting with the council and developer, only to be confronted by different plans which no one had seen. We were denied the opportunity to study these and review objections. Does council consider this to be best practice? For residents, it seems quite a shady practice. I think it's best that I take that question on notice.
Sorry, Mr. CEO, I have a question. Could you, for the benefit of the questioner, could you please explain what the outcome will therefore be now that it's on notice?
I don't have the answer off the top of my head to that question, so I will need to go and have a discussion with staff in terms of the process that was undertaken and the issue that you've raised, and then I'll provide a response to you in writing.
So just a procedural question with the other question, will we respond to Dr.
Yes.
We will respond?
Yes.
And could we get access to that response in the question?
It's in the minutes.
We will.
Okay. Shall I read from the, just for clarification, councillors, the question must be put in writing and the person asking the question must be present in the gallery when the question is called upon.
That's what I was asking.
Very well. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to take the opportunity now to acknowledge Council's Director, Planning and Environment, Teresa Dominic, who is leaving us next month after 15 years at Manningham. Teresa has been instrumental in the development and implementation of the Doncaster Hill strategy and has been a passionate advocate for improving Manningham's livability. On behalf of Council, I would like to thank Teresa for your contribution and wish you well for your future endeavours. Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I please have a motion to move in camera to consider item 18.1? Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. So, could you put the motion?
Yeah, there's nothing.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Just put to the vote, okay.
Get my glasses.
I put that motion in. Those four. Thank you. That's carried.
I move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 89 brackets 2 brackets D and F of the Local Government Act 1989 to consider item 18.1, which relates to contractual matters and legal advice.
Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. I will put that motion to the vote. Those four. Thank you. That is carried. Thank you, everyone. We'll open the doors in approximately 5 minutes.